another extension. 5 years was still in my mind. So an extension or two on that wouldn't be out of the question for me. But like I said, I can't commit to a future planning commission or future city council.
Even with the special permit, though, we're talking about a reduction in the amount of cars that we can have, and we've been told that, which is why we're fighting for the rezone.
Even with the rezoning, you would be looking at that, though. Even with the rezoning, you're looking at the same, it's going to be the same restrictions on that lot because that lot's still the same size.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't matter with the rezoning and you have the use by right, you still have a site plan that has to be approved. And, you know,
It's the same lot that
it's
we
the
approved
same.
for what?
It's the
The
same
lot
lot.
that they came in and approved for the permit when they came in.
I understand. I
That
think
was
we've all
three.
agreed that that was a mistake.
Yeah, but as far as the amount of cars and the size has not changed. We know that the zone was a mistake, but the lot hasn't changed, the size hasn't changed.
We didn't have to do a site, nothing's been constructed on that property.
So we have 75-foot backside store on the property too.
I don't have a site plan to look at, though, so I can't really tell you what.
There wasn't a construction on there, so there didn't have to. If you pull up the site planning,
Mhm.
as for if you're adding on any kind of modifications to the building, parking cars does not qualify underneath that.
Mr. Chair, can I just try to clarify the process?
I would, yeah. I
A
mean,
little bit on the
yeah,
permitting?
Speak about that a little bit.
Okay, so in the event that the rezone is not approved by the city council, they have the option of applying for a special use permit. As part of the application for a special use permit, they need to submit a site plan. Staff will review a site plan, but in that instance, or under those circumstances, we'll still be making a recommendation to the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission will be making a recommendation to the City Council. The site plan will be reviewed for the compatibility of the uses on the site. One of the constraints on the site is the fact that it has these other uses, and there needs to be proper circulation on the site. There are standards for how wide a service drive or a driveway needs to be. And so those will be constraints on how many used cars you should have on that site.
And you're saying these things will be taken into consideration should the rezone be approved? That'll be the next step?
Well, let me just clarify. In the event there's a special use permit application, staff would review that, make a recommendation to the commission would in turn make a recommendation to City Council. In the event the rezone is approved, the rezone by itself does not approve the used car sales on the lot, on the site. In the event the rezone is approved, then that means that they would have the option of applying for a land use permit, which is reviewed by the Community Development Director for how the site is designed and arranged. But in that event, that decision is made by the Community Development Director. The Planning Commission would not have the opportunity to review the land use permit application. The City Council will not have the opportunity to review a land use permit application. So I don't see how we would look at the site much differently between a special use permit application and a land use permit application. The difference is the land use permit application is not going to be reviewed by the Planning Commission or the City Council.
Mm-hmm.
The danger of that is if the Community Development Director, myself, or whoever I delegate this to, makes a decision about the land use permit that the applicant does not like, their only remedy really is to file an appeal. It should be heard by the Board of Zoning Appeals. And that's a much more limited review process. It's limited mainly to, was the decision made in error? Is it inconsistent with the zoning ordinance or the intent of the zoning ordinance? So, in any case, there would be a review of the site plan and a decision made regarding the uses on the site. It's just different if it's a rezone because the rezone is just approved. It's like signing a blank check and saying, and I don't want to, maybe I shouldn't have said that, but it's different. There's going to be less oversight by the Planning Commission and City Council in the event of approval of a rezone because the land use permit can be issued by the Community Development Director. And so those are the differences.
You have something you want to add, Ms. Jones?
Yeah, just, can you confirm, Mike, that a site plan is not required unless there's an addition of construction or add-on to the property for the business that's going in, for this, oh, that's.
Can you please come to the microphone so everyone can hear you?
Yeah, and I don't know, maybe you can pull it up so it's clear for everyone. Because I think, you know, this is on the line for us, and I think all the facts need to be out there.
Because we weren't required to do a site plan, and I know you want to talk about the old plan for the car wash that Mr. Singh applied one other time. This has nothing to do with that. You can't go off those measurements, you can't go off, that's adding a structure, and that requires a site plan. The car dealership, adding the vehicles to the lot, does not require a site plan, according to what I've read, and I tell you, I've spent more time reading this than I care to have. And I just feel like everybody needs to understand all of the facts and not part of the facts. Because whether it goes to them and they deny it or not, I think an educated decision needs to be made based on what is required and what is not. And the site plan was not required.
There might be some confusion about the term site plan. The land use permit, if there's a land use permit application, we will need to review something with dimensions on it or to scale about the site, so we can make a judgment about what can be put on that site.
Can you pull that up?
And I think, and I'm calling it a site plan, and that's, I don't know what they did before, but I don't see how the Community Development Department can make a decision about a land use permit for something like this without reviewing some kind of plan for where the cars are parked and displayed. Again, I don't know, are you asking me to pull it up in the zoning code?
Yeah,
or?
because it's not under the land use permit code, and it's not under the site planning code, which where the definition of what requires a site plan.
Well, in my opinion, it doesn't need to be in the land use
But we
permit
got to go by
chapter.
the facts, right? And I agree with you.
I just don't know how you can, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I just don't know how you can make a judgment without reviewing a site plan or some kind of plan.
I think this is just one of those tricky
Yeah.
areas, but I actually have to agree with Mike that.
Okay, but it's not in there. It's not
It
in
may
there.
not be in there. I would not be surprised, though, if at some point a site plan isn't required.
Okay.
Well, if you can find it for me, I'd be happy to.
Okay.
Well, this is a, just a point of clarification. Amy just reminded me, in the land use permit that was issued, it was issued without a site plan showing the specific location of cars, but a stipulation on the permit was that they submit a site plan. So my understanding what happened is the city, the codes administrator issued a site plan, or excuse me, issued a land use permit, and they said, we'll do this, but you need to give us a site plan, and they came in and we talked, and they discussed some kind of site plan or some
That
kind
they
of...
came out and physically looked.
And I've actually seen some notes that indicates, they came out and looked at the site, so there was a discussion based on a drawing and also based on a site visit.
That approved the site plan.
I will not, that's not the way I would do it. I would want to see a site plan, so I would have something to review. I would not issue a land use permit and subject, that's just not the way I would go about that, about doing that. And
Do you have anything that gives us, that will show us that you asked us to give you a site plan that we can see? Because we have nothing in the records, we brought it
Well,
all
it's
up.
only on the permit.
Yeah.
It does have the star for the site plan, which was when they came out and did the walkthrough. That was their site plan, if you will, of the visual, and that's when they signed off on it, and that's when it was approved. So there was not a paper-formed measurement site plan. There was the previous plans for the lot reviewed and the actual walkthrough of the site itself.
right.
So I think, and that's where those special conditions were put in. So, Mike, I understand, and you're coming into this late in the game, and you know I have a lot of respect for you. This isn't personal, but this is about our business. And could've, should've, would've isn't my job. I don't work for the city. I don't get a paycheck. I don't know the ins and outs. And clearly, meeting after meeting, neither does anyone else. Because new things pop up, new explanations keep coming up time after time. We're almost a year into this, and we can't come to a final decision when we're already surrounded by C3. Again,